Let me share my screen. Okay. In today's class, I will explain the topic. What are the pure React components and what are the impure React components? Okay, this is a small topic, but I need to explain that. So before going to explain the what are the pure React components, what are impure React components, you need to understand what are the pure functions and impure functions in the JavaScript. So before going to understand what are the pure and impure components in React, you need to understand what are the pure functions and impure functions in the JavaScript. Okay. Let me explain what are the pure functions in the JavaScript. Okay. For example, I'm writing the. I will explain what are the pure function and impure function in JavaScript. For example, I have a function. Okay. Let's check add. Okay. So for this add function, I am passing the two arguments, x comma y. Okay. Now I am returning the x plus y. Okay. So this function is the pure function. Why this function I call it the pure function? Because this functionality of this function is based on only its inputs, its arguments only. It's not taking any from outside. It's not taking from the any from the outside into this function. It's only this function accepting only x comma y, only the arguments, and based on the arguments only is working, but it is not taking any variable from the outside of the function. Okay, so this is a pure function. So if you do any functionality based on only its arguments or only its inputs, this is called the pure function. Okay, for example, I have a variable, global variable. Let's like a variable G global. Like let's take I have a variable G global. It's a value 10. Okay. I am using this global variable into this function. Now, what happened? This functionality is depends on the outside the variables, outside the function variables. These functions are called the impure functions. Okay, if some functions which are dependent on outside the function variables also, those are called impure functions. Okay, for example, if I give here 1, 2, 1, 2, then what is output? Then what is output? Hello, what is output here?
13.
If you not give any, if you not take any outside the variable, then what is output?
3.
So if you are not taking any outside the variable, then the output is then the function is called the pure function. Let's see the console, the value. Let's print this value. Okay. The output is 3. So here this function is not taking any variables from the outside of the function. Only this function local variables only is using. That's why this function is called the pure function. Okay. If I use the outside variable into this function, for example, I'm using the outside function variable, this variable into this function, then this function is the impure function. Okay, this is the thing. So if a function uses only its variable, then the function is called a pure function. If a function takes the help of the other outside function variables, then the function is the impure function. You understand what is a pure function, what is impure function?
Yes.
Okay. Now, for example, here I am passing the one the result is 13. Okay. Again, if I pass the 3, 4, then the result is
7.
17. So what happening is, if you change the input parameter, so let's remove this. Let's remove this g value. Okay. Now the output is 37, right? So if you change the input arguments, again the functionality will do. And also, for example, instead of 3, 4, 3, 4, if we pass the 1, 2 again, I passing the 1, 2 multiple times. Okay. The output is same, right? The output is same. 3, 3, 3. But what happening is, if you pass some arguments 1, 2 to the function, first time. If you pass the same arguments the second time and third time, fourth time, it does not do the functionality. So the browser thinks, the browser checks if more than one time, if you pass the same arguments, it does not do the functionality. It stores the return value in the memory, the cache. The browser stores this the return value in the cache. Okay, the output value in the cache. So if you pass the same variables, same inputs again and again, it's not come again here and coming here. It's not do again the come 1, 2 is coming here, 1, 2 again is coming here. It's not do like that. So if you pass the same variable, first second time, it will stores in the cache. Okay, if you pass the same arguments, it is not got, it will not go here. It will check the from the cache. Okay, so then do again the functionality. For example, I have the large functionality here. For example, I have the x into y plus y plus, okay, x plus y. So it's doing some calculation, right? It's doing some calculation based on our arguments. Okay, first time if you pass the some arguments 1, 2 is to this functionality x into y x plus 5. Second time if you pass the second time it will do. If you pass the same arguments again and again, it will not do this calculation. What it will do is the browser will store the return value in the cache. So what is the return value in the cache? If you pass the 1, 2, what is the return value? It stores in the cache. So if you sending the 1, 2, it does not do the calculation. It take the value from the cache. Why? Because if you pass the 1, 2 again and again, if you do the functionality again and again, it's a waste of the time because you are passing the same arguments everything. Why we need to do again and the functionality? So the browser will do, if you pass the same arguments again and again, it will show the value in the cache. So next if you pass the same argument, it takes the return value from the cache. So then the performance wise it will increase. It does not do the functionality again and again. Just take the return value from the cache and give the result. That's why, so the time for doing the functionality will reduce. Then the performance of the page will increase. So if you pass same arguments, you function again and again, the browser stores the value in the cache and from the cache to give the value. You clear, right? Up to this part. If people understand what is the pure function, what is the impure function, and what if you pass the same arguments again and again, what will happen? These 3 things you can understand. If you can understand, any those? Hello, any those?
No, understand.
Okay. Now come to the real case.
Yeah. So here 3 points. One is Actually, if you pass the same arguments, it will take from the cache.
Yeah.
And if it is pure functions, the arguments, it will take the value from only the arguments. If it is impure, it will take from the outside also.
If it is impure, it will use the outside function variables also. Yes, 3 points.
Okay. Okay, sir. Got it.
Yeah. Now going to the React components. Okay, now, what are the pure components? What are the impure components? Okay. What are the pure components? What are the pure components in React? What are the impure components in React? Okay. Actually, what happens is in the React, the pure components is what happens. For example, you have the header value, right? This header, you have the app component, right? And you have the app component, you have the header component and footer component. Okay, this header component it takes the this for example, consider the header component, right? This header components take the props. That means takes the data from the outputs. That means same as the arguments of that function. Same as the argument of the header component, right? So here color and name, right? So here we are passing the color, name, handle data. We are passing these parameters. These are the arguments of the header component, right? These are the arguments of the header component. Okay. What we will do is, okay, if you call this header component again, now you are passing the different data. Like so you are using this, you are passing the different arguments to the same component, right? Let's see. I'm running up. Okay. So what you did? You taking the two arguments. So you take the one component. You are passing the different arguments everything, right? I'm starting the application. Okay. So let's do output. So you pass another component two times. First time is pass the red test, second time pass the green testing. Okay. So if every time you are passing you pass to a component, every time you pass the props to a component, the component will render again. What is the rendering? What is the rendering in the React? You have area what is the rendering in the React? What is the rendering in React? Anyone have idea?
No.
Let me explain what is the rendering in React. For example, you creating a component means what is if you create a component in the React means what is that means we are creating some view, right? Some HTML view. For example, with the header component, I am creating this view, right? This is our React view. This is the component create the view. I need to put this view into original view. Action this is the app component. If you go to index.js, this is called the rendering. The rendering. You see, right? Rendering function. That means here we are putting the app component into this element, into this element. We already have this root element in the index.html. In index.html, we already have the root value. Okay, for example, let's see, go to the public. This is the original page. But initially, this is the original page. Before creating the React, we are not doing any React elements. Okay, this is the original HTML page. In this HTML page, I take in this content. This is like consider this is the whole box. This whole page. In this whole page, I'm creating the header component, footer component, the app component, right? So in this element, in this it's the HTML DOM element. In this original HTML DOM element, I'm creating my views and putting into this element. Okay. So here I created the header component, footer component, and I put in the app component. No, I put the whole app component into this element. So our whole React applications means are creating some different views and rendering into this element. This is the original element. Okay, this is the original element. In this element, whatever we create the React views using the components, they are rendering into this element. This is the rendering. If people understand? If people understand?
Yes, sir.
So, for example, if we inspect here, what happened? This is the whole. This is the root element. This is the main HTML. In this main HTML, I am integrating into my view. This is I create this view. This total view I create the HTML. In the using the React I create the view. I put it here. Right. For example, let's see. Go to the app component. Okay, the app component. For example, I have a function. For example, I put, here we put one div like we put one div like something like something. Okay, maintain the time value. Okay, create a one time value. Okay, I create one variable time value like this. Okay, I create a local variable. Let's consider this main title only. Okay. Okay. So initially I had a main title, right? So main initial title. What I will do is I create a function like create state something. Otherwise, here I write a function like set interval. There is set interval. Set interval means in set interval you will do something for every 2 minutes if you want to for every 2 seconds if you want to do something. Okay, I want to change the title value. Okay, just a minute. So here I want to change the title value. The title value. Okay, for every 2 seconds I want to change the title value. Here. So what we'll do? So for example, we'll consider the I value. Here I press one. Here I bring the I press one. I press plus. Okay. Consider the I value is the 0. I value is the 0. Okay. Just a minute. Just a minute. So here I want to change the title value for every second. That is my goal. Okay. So what I will do is what I will do is here I have the date to. So let's see, for example, instead of the I value, what I will do is okay. Here I'm putting the date dot. So I put like this. What I do. So for every 2 seconds, I'm changing this title value, right? I'm changing for every 2 seconds. Set it means for every 2 seconds, I'm changing the title value. Okay, what happens here? 32 is come, right? Time is not coming, right? So, well, he should call here. See output is coming. It's not a function. Okay. You can do one thing. You see, right? This value is changing, right? Here is value changing, right? Hello? Hello?
Yes, yes.
So for every 2 seconds, you are changing the value. So for every 2 seconds, you are rendering this component. You are rendering this component. Here is the one concept is called the virtual term. Okay. Here one concept is called the virtual term. Okay. Virtual term means if you want to render something, for example, what is virtual term means? So before rendering anything, for example, you have the real HTML root element. You have the your reactive. You have the real HTML root element. You have the your React components. Okay. So if you want, if you put this React components into this root element, this is the rendering, right? So what happened here? I'm doing for every 2 seconds, I'm rendering. That means every 2 seconds, the total you need to change, right? For every two seconds, the total you need to change. But if you see here, only this particular part is was changing, right? Because what will virtual DOM do is first it will take the before rendering what will do is first will take the virtual real DOM to virtual real DOM. Okay, then it's copy of the virtual DOM into your memory. It's create the virtual DOM. Okay, that means it's copy this whole view. It's copy this whole view. Okay, if any changes happen, it will compare the whole the changes with the new this view. So what it will think? The changes only happen this part only, not the whole view, not the whole component. Only this part only these changes happen. Wherever changes happen, only other part only it will render. It was not rendering the whole component again. You understand? So see here, for every 2 seconds it was rendering. For every 2 seconds it's rendering the total view. But here, if you see here, it will change here only, right? So wherever it changes, only there only it was rendering. Okay. If people understand what is rendering, rendering means putting our React component the root element into the real HTML element. You understand, right? Hello?
Yes, yes.
So here for every 2 seconds it's rendering. For every 2 seconds it's rendering. Okay. For example, let's consider this value. Let's go to here. Okay. Okay. Now what we will do is we have the now I passing this color value, right? This color value, this I will passing the title value to this color elastic, right? This main title value to this color. Okay. So with this color means So what you are doing is the header component, you are passing the color property, right? This value, everything it was changing. This value every 2 seconds is changing. So then every 2 seconds the header component will render, right? See, every 2 seconds this header component will render. See, it's changing, right? The color value. Did you understand? Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So every 2 seconds this color value is rendering. Every 2 seconds the header component is rendering. So first time same as the function argument. For example, first time you pass the 1 comma 2, 1 comma 2. Second time you pass the 3 comma 2, 2 comma 2. Second third time you pass the 3 comma 2. In this way, everything the functionality will do, right? Everything then this functionality will do. For example, if I so what I'm doing for every 2 seconds I'm changing this value. For example, even for every 2 seconds, if I pass the same value, let's see. So for every 2 seconds I'm passing the same value. Any changes happening? Any changes happening here? Here for every 2 seconds I'm changing the value, right? For every 2 seconds I'm changing the properties of the component. Okay, but then every 2 seconds this header component need to load, right? For example, if I put the IPSS here, what happened? We put the IPSS here, what happened? Let's tell what happened. For every 2 seconds, the header component will render again and again, right? For every 2 seconds, sorry, the change. Yes, sorry. So for every 2 seconds, I'm changing the property of the header component, right? For every 2 seconds, I'm changing the property of the header component. That's why for every 2 seconds, the header component will render. Right? For every 2 seconds, the header component will render, right? You got it?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Wise 2. Yeah, see, for every 2 seconds, the header component will render. See here, don't do one thing. See, for every 2 seconds, it's changing, right? Right? Because for every 2 seconds, we're changing the color value. Now also, I'm changing the every 2 seconds, right? Now also I'm changing the every 2 seconds, right? Now let's look. Now also I'm changing the every 2 seconds, but the rendering is happening. Is the rendering happening?
No.
Why again for every 2 seconds I'm changing this title, right? But then if you change the title again, this need to load, this need to render again. So every 2 seconds this header component need to render. But why is not rendering again? Rendering? Why is not rendering? Even if you change the property value, why is not rendering? Any clue? See here for every 2 seconds I'm changing the title value. I need to render header component. This is the scenario. Why is not rendering here? Any value? Any guess? Anyone tell? Another you will tell? Hello? Narendra, you understand?
Hello. Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah. Because it is taking from cache.
Not like that. Not like that. You are okay. It's taken from the cache. Okay, even it's taking that from the cache and passing to the well. It's taking that from the cache and passing to this component, right? Then again, the component need to render, right? Why it's not rendering?
Yes, yes. No, it is.
So when every 2 seconds takes from the value as possible the other component. Then every 2 seconds need to render. Why is not rendering? Because for every 2 seconds you are passing the data, but for every 2 seconds you are passing the same value. We are passing the same value, right? For every 2 seconds we are passing hello, 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 hello. Every 2 seconds we are passing the same value. So the React component, if we pass the same props again, if you pass the same props, or if you pass the same state value, I will express state value also. Okay, if you pass the same props to the components again and again, it will not re-render again. Only if any changes in the props, then only it will re-render again. This concept is called the pure components. Okay, so there is no change in the props of the component, then the component is the pure components. You understand? If there is if any changes happen,
Yeah, yes.
if any changes happen in the props value, then the rendering happening. Rendering happen. So if there is no change in the props value, it's not rendering again. But sometimes you need to rendering again. Some people want even the props data is changed with the same value. I need to render. Then we have some function like should component update. So component more some function is there. I will explain that one later. Okay. So you are changing the value, but you are passing the same value for every 2 seconds. So if you change the property of the same value as previous, it's not rendering again and again. Okay. So the props of the component is not changed, that is called the pure component. If the props of the component is changed, that's called the impure component. Any doubts?
So how can we know that it is pure and impure? Because it looks same, right? So, uh,
Yeah, I told that if the for example, you create a component, right? You create a component. If the component is not changed, if the component is not changed, the props of the component is not changed through the propagation, then that is a pure component. Okay, so every time we're passing the same props every time, then that is a pure component. You understand?
yes, yes.
In other way, if there is no change in the data of the component, that's a pure component. Okay. And also, for example, in the header component, for example, let's take the footer component. The footer component, there is no change in the state value. For example, the state here you see. Initially, you put the title this is footer title. After clicking the button, it will setting the title. This is the new title. Instead of that, for example, so now this is the now here I am not using the props, I am using the state. For example, state. If I click the button value, the state value will change. But the state will change the same value, right? After clicking the button, I'm changing the local with the same values. Okay, for example, footer, for example, there is a footer. Okay, sorry. Where is footer component not there? Okay, for example, footer component. Footer spelling. Yeah. So I'm changing the footer component. I have the footer component. I click the button, I'm changing the, for example, I have a footer component. For example, let's see. This is the footer component. If I click the button, I'm changing the category, count and category, right? Count and category with the same value. Count and category with the same value. That's why there is no change in here. For example, if I change